Hi, my name is Tam. Welcome to this discussion I'm having today with Dr. Adam Staples here beside me. We're talking about reflective practice. I'll get that out. Hey, Adam, welcome.
Thank you, Tam. Pleasure to be here.
Now, we have had some technical difficulties with Facebook today, so we will get to go live at 10, and I'm just checking that we're going live now. It's not coming through for some reason. That's okay, but what I might do, Adam, is just record this session and I'll post it up anyway. So we've got, I think this, we started a great discussion and you unpacking what reflective practice is and also giving us some background in your work at Trobe University, working in education. And I was just so intrigued about reflective practice and the potential power of that when we met at Bendigo Tech School co-design activity called Learning Creates, which is about coming up with new ways for young people to demonstrate their skills and be work ready and getting over the idea that an ATAR score represents a young person. And your major contribution, I think, to this work was the idea of reflective practice. And, that excited me for the potential of a young person to be empowered to, for themselves to think about what they're doing and also to self-identify those skills and potentially plan towards, the next step in their career development or pathway in education or career or employment. So that's why I really wanted to have a chat. So thank you for your time.
Total pleasure.
What is reflective practice?
Reflective practice. So I will come at this from the context of being a teacher educator. So I work at the School of Education at Trobe University. I'm on the Bendigo campus, and I work with students who are in initial teacher education programs. So they're learning how to become teachers. And within initial teacher education, developing a reflective practice is incredibly important. It's very visible. And it is a fairly frequent endeavor that these students engage in. So whether it's through assessment tasks or through the development of their own portfolio and things like that. Really, for me, I understand reflective practice as being that opportunity to take stock of an experience that you have had, usually within a professional endeavor. So as a teacher, you would be reflecting on the experiences in the classroom that day as you were engaging in your practice of, as you're enacting the practice of being a teacher. And reflective practice provides a really powerful entry point, I think, into being able to describe and analyze what you've done and to take up both the successes and perhaps the challenges of that endeavor, and to then think through how you might refine that and move forward with those refinements to essentially improve your practice, transform your practice in a longitudinal way. And it's a way of it's a way of sort of building skills of building understanding about your knowledge and your skills as well, which I think is really important. It's not just about having that knowledge, it's about understanding that knowledge. It's not just about having the skill, it's about understanding that skill and how you do what you do with that skill. And I think, we've spoken about this over the last few minutes about, is it a sort of a one-stop shop? Do you do it once, or is it an iterative endeavor? And I think it needs to be iterative. It needs to be something that you build upon and, across the lifespan of your career, really.
Yeah, I think I'm really interested in understanding reflective practice, I suppose, for myself and how that might, add value to my work, running a small business. And I think there's other people in business that would get value from reflective practice as well. And but I've got like no idea how to start. Like, what do I do?
So I suppose a way to start without sort of delving into too many theories and models and all the rest of it, which, very happy to do to the best of my ability. But to begin with, I would understand reflective practice as being really a journaling or a diarization of an experience that you've had. So you've got an experience that you want to, or that you can learn from and that you can build upon. And so what you want to think about is, how do I set up a way of being able to document that and build that into a narrative that's going to help me understand what I do and those kind of things. So in a very sort of, I suppose in a very real way, it would be literally a way of getting, a diary or a notebook. And, you've had a particular experience when you're running one of your sessions, or you're facilitating one of those, a session, and you think, okay, my goal today is going to be able to reflect on how I engaged my audience. Maybe that's something that you feel that you want to be working on in your own practice, in your role. And so you're going to think through and actually write down, okay, this is what happened. This is the situation. And this is how I felt I was engaging with my audience and how they're engaging with me. And it's not just about telling a fantastic, beautiful, gosh, I'm great story. It needs to be about the positives and the challenges in that. And
that's a good question in there. Like, for me, that's, kind of scary.
Why?
But why? Well, you might be in a situation where you have to face things, or, come to a place where you're just like, gosh, that's something I didn't do so well. Or, and then I suppose that was leading to my next question of like, is it an opportunity to then step out how you're going to be, improve, or, grow upon what you have achieved?
Yeah, definitely. That is the purpose of it. So a reflection would not be a good example of a reflective practice, or rather a not so good example of reflective practice. Would say you're running a seminar and you reflected on it, and your reflection was that was great, full stop, or that was rubbish, full stop. That is not an effective reflection. It's kind of like a rationalization of what you did rather than a reflection. What you want to do is go, okay, I enjoyed that particular session because, the audience engaged me as I was walking through the room. I was focusing my attention on them rather than looking at the PowerPoint, whatever it may be. And then you're also able to say, and some of the challenges of it were, I noticed that the back row of the room weren't engaging with me because I didn't I didn't engage them, or whatever it may be. So what you're actually doing is you're describing that experience in detail, all facets of it, which can be sort of kind of complex. That's why I said, perhaps you want to focus on audience engagement or whatever it is. And if you've noticed that the back row of the room weren't engaging with you, you want to unpack that and find out why that was happening. And then, was it that you weren't walking into that particular physical space of the room during the session? So you then know that when you present your next seminar, that you will be doing that. You'll be making sure that you actually, you'll make notes about that, and you'll make sure that you do go and engage with that back row. That's a very simplistic example, and probably, not the most interesting example I can come up with, but that's what you're doing. You're actually, okay, I acknowledge that didn't work, but at the same time, you're also acknowledging what did work. Acknowledging that the front two rows were engaging with you very well, because you were in and out of those rows. You were talking to the individuals. You were looking at their work. You were asking for their feedback, whereas you just blatantly ignore the last row. And so what you're doing there is you're giving yourself clues and sort of permission really to change your practice for the next time.
Well, it's a little form of backing yourself,
It
really.
is. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, which I'm a big advocate for.
Mm.
Yeah, backing yourself. Adam, how, like, as I said, I really love this idea. I am ridiculously busy in my business delivering things to my clients, but I know there's always space to improve and learn and be more. I feel like reflective practice would assist with that. And I'm also thinking I'm expanding my team at the moment, and how I build my relationships as team I'm very conscious of, and I think reflective practice would help that too. How do I build that into my day, and how am I going to get real value out of that? Have any miracle recommendations?
I don't think I've got a miracle recommendation, but very really good questions that you ask, really important questions that you ask. I would say you'd want to be identifying a model of reflective practice that's going to work for you. And we can talk about some of those in a moment, and maybe how you go around finding one. So finding a model of reflective practice that gives you a structure for your thinking and for your documentation. At the very basic level, reflection reflective practice is about thinking about something. And then at the other end of that spectrum, it's actually about having really tried and tested rigorous practices that are providing you with a very focused kind of reflection. And so I think, first of all, you want that. You don't just want to be, making notes here, there, and ever, and saying, I'm just going to do a bit of reflection today on something. You want to have a really clear focus. And so if you're building your team, it may be, you're reflecting on the way that you're developing collegial relationships with your team, on ways that you are listening to your team and providing feedback to your team, providing them the opportunity to debrief with you, or, all those things that begin to come into play when you're developing a team. I would start off by buying yourself a notebook, and that is actually your reflective journal. So with pre-service teachers in teacher education, it's very much about developing a reflective journal. Teachers, in-service teachers actually out in the field, they also use reflective journals as they reflect on their practice. And it's nothing more complex other than writing following a structure, but writing your reflections down. That is certainly I think probably the clearest way of doing it. So that's
something that I need to do every day, every Tuesday, or just when I feel like it. I
would say get into a really good structure of doing it every day.
Every day.
Because you're not writing, you don't have to write page after page after page.
Yeah.
They can be really short statements. Especially if you're focusing on one thing. So if you're focusing on how you're developing collegial relationships with your team, that could be the focus of your reflections for a month. And doing it every day might sound excessive, but if you're keeping it, if that's really the one thing that you want to focus on for the month, it can be a sentence a day that you're writing on it. If you locate this model reflection that gives you the structure, that takes away half of the battle. I think if you just say, I'm going to reflect, you're quite right. What am I going to reflect about? But as you start to investigate the models and you're selecting them, they will give you those clues and that advice. So one of the models that I recommend that you look at is actually the Gibbs model of reflection. So it was, I think, Graham Gibbs developed it, I think, in 1988, and it has 6.
One of my favorite years.
Oh, really? It has 6 very distinct stages. So in Gibbs's model, you've got the description stage, which is a description of the experience. So if you've selected, I'm going to be focusing on collegial relationships, you can describe an experience that day that involved a collegial relationship. Even if you went for coffee or you had a chat about, emails, whatever it is. The next stage in Gibbs's model is about feelings. So what are your feelings and thoughts about that experience? And again, one sentence, doesn't need to be, masses of text. Sometimes I think we feel we need to, write as though it's the last thing that we're going to be doing. It doesn't. It just needs, it can be really short and succinct. The third one is an evaluation of that experience, good and bad. Fourth one is an analysis of that to make sense of it. Then you've got a conclusion where you're writing about what you've learned and perhaps how you're going to move forward. And then you develop a short action plan about what you're actually going to do.
I love that sixth one.
The action plan.
Yeah, I can see doing that. I'm going to go out shopping and buy myself a journal. I love buying journals. I can just see if I did spend that tiny bit of time on it, it could be just so powerful and just save me years of floundering potentially.
Yeah. Look, Tam, it's really easy not to reflect. It's really easy not to have a reflective practice. It's really easy to as a teacher educator, deliver lectures, deliver workshops. It's very easy at the end of the day not to do the reflective practice. Incredibly easy. When you do it, or when I do it, I have a much more intense understanding of the lecture or the workshop or the content, the way that my students have responded to it, the way they're responding to me, the way that I'm responding to them. And what you actually do is you're developing different perspectives about that experience. So you could think, oh, okay, my seminar didn't work with my clients because they weren't listening. But actually, going through that reflective process, you might begin to think about, well, why weren't they listening? Was it because I was monotone? Was it because I hadn't pitched the content correctly? So it gives you the opportunity to say, yes, okay, they weren't listening, but why weren't they listening? And
yeah, that's the scary bit, isn't it? Sort of digging in there, but that digging around is going to be
it's vital. It's vital. And look, no one, well, that's probably not true. Some people probably do like, really challenging feedback. Nobody likes challenging feedback. But, if you get challenging feedback and you make the effort to respond to it, through this reflective process, the chances are you're not going to repeat what went wrong. But if you don't reflect on it and if you don't do something about it, the chances are it will repeat. And what this whole thing with reflective practice is, I believe that transformation of your skills, your knowledge, and really importantly, your understanding of those things. So you become a I was about to say a better person. It's not, I'm not suggesting that anyone is, not a good person, but it's so that you can be proud of what you're doing and really, contribute in your endeavors in your field.
Yeah, well, it feels like an awareness.
That's a great word. It really is an awareness. Yeah.
Yes. And the other thing that's coming to mind is a quote, but I don't think I'm going to quote it quite properly, but just that idea of what you put your focus and energy into, is what's going to evolve or grow. And having a reflective practice, yes, could definitely contribute towards, goals that you have as a leader, or goals that you might have in, growing or scaling a business.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's a really important point that, with reflection, a reflective practice, I don't think you're reflecting on every single part of what happened. You'd be there forever and a day. I think it's a really great opportunity. Sorry?
You never do anything.
No, exactly. Apart from reflect. So if you do select, how am I developing my leadership sort of acumen, I suppose, or my leadership ability, And with that, it's not just about you reflecting about it. It's also that super scary thing of getting other people to reflect on it as well and to listen to them, because this whole idea of reflective practice opening up different perspectives, your perspectives on your leadership qualities may be entirely different to your team. And really, you've got to listen to them, haven't you? So.
Yeah. Yes. The other thing I suppose I'm thinking, like the idea of a business coach or a mentor, and if there is that sort of focus on a reflective practice, that's something perhaps you could take to a mentor or a coach and show and have that discussion of, this is what I'm working through, these are the challenges that I'm facing, and taking the pressure off yourself to have all the answers or the different options to work through things, but still being able to articulate, where you're at and where potentially you could go.
Yeah, definitely. I'm also just thinking about the work that you're doing with learning crates and those young people. I think this idea of providing them with the opportunity for reflective practice will allow them to not only acknowledge those skills and abilities and talents that they've got, but actually, acknowledge and be able to think about how they enact them, how they apply them, why they're important. Perhaps some of the aspects of it that, aren't working quite so well, or perhaps are a little bit unnecessary. Your thinking just now, or your comment just now about really allowing you to focus in on the important things. We can all of us in what we do, sometimes we focus on something that we may be interested in, but it's actually not moving the idea forward or moving the thinking forward. And it's not to say that you can't engage in that particular part of it, but maybe it's just not, it's not the focus of that particular time. And that reflective practice allows you to acknowledge that it's interesting and good, but perhaps not important at that moment in time.
The other thing I was thinking, even being stuck or avoiding something.
Yeah, great.
A big thing that I avoid is social media.
Right.
You can't. It's just a part of how we communicate and participate in this social world now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't
definitely
know.
But this is sort of moving on a bit from reflective practice, but we spoke about transformative practice earlier on, about that idea of transforming. And I think what you were talking about just then with that difficult component is that liminal space that we sit in. So where you're adept at something and you know something like the back of your hand, and you could be doing that forever and a day. You could do that for the rest of your life, but there is no transformation. There's no refinement. There's no improvement. There's no change in your contributions. And so we then sit on this difficult space, which is, the liminal space, where you're not sure about what's going on. You're not the expert. You don't have all the answers immediately, but you've got to go through that sort of turgid, difficult space in order to be transformed and start doing new things. And your avoidance of social media, I would say that's probably a liminal space for you. You know that it's got potential, but actually you're quite comfortable where you are now. And so to get into that space of the liminal, so you can move forward, you're going to be in a challenging time. That's really interesting, that whole sort of the transformative aspect, the liminal space, and I think that they go hand in hand with reflective practice. That you're with the reflective practice, you're visualizing and verbalizing those prickly moments quite often.
I've got one more last question for you. Thank you so much for your time today, Adam. This is something I'd love to be discussing, and I'd love to know more about your expertise or knowledge and wisdom in the work that you do as a lecturer. But what I wanted to ask, have you had experiences with your students in their reflective practice and witnessed an aha moment or something that has transformed because of their reflective practice. Has that, have you been able to put them on that sort of journey through your knowledge of this?
100%. So I don't think that it's in a reflective practice. It's not about the sort of teacher putting them through that. They've definitely put themselves through that through being self-reflective practitioners. They're taking up that challenge themselves, and they are experiencing that themselves. But the key thing that you just mentioned there is this aha moment. And in learning, in doing, in everybody's lives, we have these aha moments when the light bulb is switched on. And those kind of aha moments, I think, are absolutely crucial to being documented and captured in a reflective practice, and really honored, because they're incredibly important. And you do see this in reflective journaling. And especially, I think if you position it as, if you have an aha moment, I want to be reading about it, and these aha moments begin to be identified and documented, and they're incredibly powerful, really, really powerful. Yeah, there's a great bit of terminology in aha moment, I think.
Well, I definitely had one when I heard you talking about reflective practice, and I'm inspired. I'm going to get onto that and build that into my daily practice. So I thank you so much for sharing and for your inspiration. I am looking forward to more conversations.
Yeah, definitely.
And really appreciate your time today.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.